I have a very nice brass piece of Lord Ganesh sitting back on his pillow. Is there on my desk, and at the feet of Lord Ganesh is a rat which is beseeching the Lord. Really, I mean, in a sense, that was our relationship. He was the Lord, and we were little minor sort of animals at his feet, looking up in total awe.
He's forthright and honest and upfront.
He is genuinely a peace activist.
बहुत ऑनेस्ट हैं वो, और उनकी जो बातें हैं उनके अंदर कोई मिलावट या उसमें नहीं है कि कोई अच्छा है कोई बड़ा है छोटा, उनकी कोई ऐसी बात नहीं.
Liberal and totally fearless. I tell you, he quite considerate, generous and noble to a fault.
You know, he was the first popular journalist in India, popular in the serious sense of the word.
He brought youth into journalism, not simply in bringing young people, which he did, but also completely fresh ideas, ideas which smelt of youth.
In the early 80s, when he was editor of the Hindustan Times, he hired me there as the editor of their Sunday magazine. And again, it was a kind of a dour, tired-looking place into which he injected a huge breath of fresh air.
Sort of image that comes to my mind is from Guide, when Kishore Sahu is entering those caverns and caves, and sort of brushing the cobwebs with his stick, right? So Khushwant is always a person who is completely, with a great irritation, destroying cobwebs.
Maybe that persona that comes through in his malice columns has tended to obscure a little bit his worth as a novelist, as a literary figure.
They remember him as the editor of the Illustrated Weekly, as the author of humor books and sex books and all that. Very few people know the very solid work that he's done, especially on the history of the Sikhs.
So he has quite a wide register, from the famous sort of sexual rambunctiousness to the political savvy, to the courageous speaker out for various causes, quite often unpopular and in the face of death threats, to the raconteur of what the passing scene is.
Every subject he can write very well. I tell you, if you ask him to write a piece on table, he will write in such a way that you will feel interested to read it.
He's very disciplined. He gets up at a particular time and he's very rigid in his habits.
सुबह 4, 4:15, 4:30 बजे वो चाय पीते हैं. खाने का पीने का उनका टाइम है. हम उनको किसी भी हालत में 7:45 बजे खाना तैयार रखते हैं. दिन में हम 12 बजे कराटे उनको लंच देते हैं.
He would be the first in the office. Then at some point he would go to Parliament House. Then he would come back. Then around 6:37 he would go home. And at 9 o'clock he would be back to put the paper to bed, to see the front page and make, really hands-on kind of changes.
Come 7 o'clock and the glasses are in front of us. Come 7:13 these days and we're thrown out.
I was once granted an extra 10 minutes and felt extremely privileged. I was chided by Mama on the way back, who said, Vikram, I think you overstayed your welcome and I think you should have left Khushwant. I said, but Mama, he insisted that I have a second scotch, late though it was.
Writing is not an easy job. 2 columns writing and then book reviews also, then interviews also. He is awfully busy throughout the day. it is more than 25 or 30 years, it has never happened, never a column was missed.
ज़्यादा करके शौक उनको यही दिलचस्पी है पढ़ने लिखने की। मुझे लगता है लिखने पढ़ने से उनकी लाइफ भी अच्छी चल रही है क्योंकि उनको और फालतू टाइम कोई सोचने का नहीं है।
Very disciplined in many ways and also very excessive in others. I think he had about 20 cats just roaming around being fed by him. Perhaps he thought they were authors or the spirits of authors encapsulated in cats, and he could be a patron in another sense as well.
Sometimes when he is writing and there is no ink in the pen, he still goes on he still continues to write.
सरदार जी के बाद मैं 54 से हूँ। इतने साल हमको हो गए, मुंह में कभी गुस्सा नहीं देखा।
There's something about people who are loved by animals that you can trust them.
The world really comes to him. All sorts of people. He's very generous. If somebody wants to meet him, well, within that 1 hour limit, he will meet them and he will give hugely of himself.
छोटा से छोटा आदमी आता है उसको भी मिलते हैं और बड़ा से बड़ा आदमी आता है उसको भी मिलते हैं। इंदिरा जी यहाँ आए, ज्ञानी जैल सिंह जी आते थे, संजय की मैडम आती थी, मिसेस मनिका गांधी आती थी, संजय जी आते थे, सब हमारे यहाँ खाना खा के जाते थे।
Great things about going to his house in the evening for a drink is that you don't know who you'll meet, and you'll meet anybody from the age of 25 to 85.
I really met just the most wonderful, the most amazing, the most brilliant, the most stupid, the most cunning, the most corrupt.
If visitors had their way, it would be non-stop, sort of a railway station.
The house is still very much a very alive darbar in the evenings at 7 o'clock.
It's very sad when people want to see him. They either come with a manuscript or they come wanting to be written up about or some favor or the other. But I wish people would just come and visit him for the sake of interacting with him and learning from him.
My husband went to see him. When he came back home, I asked him, did you meet him? He said, yes, I met him, but unusual thing happened there. I said, what happened? He said he was having a glass of whiskey but listening to the Kirtan. So my husband said, well, this combination I could not digest. So he asked him that what is this combination of whiskey and Kirtan, not with ghazals and all. He says, he told him in Punjabi, कि तनु नहीं पता, इधर नाल बहुत समझ आंदी है.
In spite of being an agnostic, here's a man who says the Gayatri Mantra in the morning. At night, when he goes to sleep, he just goes back through the day and asks himself, has he hurt anybody deliberately? Has he been cruel to anybody?
He likes to say he's agnostic, but he's actually a very God-fearing person and quite rooted to Indian traditions, to religious traditions, as much as he makes fun of them.
मुझसे कहते मैंने कुरान को 3 बार पढ़ा है और मैंने बड़े अच्छे तरीके और बहुत सी बातें मेरे को बताते थे और बहुत से कभी कभी ऐसे सवाल कर लेते थे कि जो कि भैया आपके यहाँ कब्रों में क्या लेटर लिख कर रखते हैं। मैंने कहा जी हमारे यहाँ तो ऐसा कुछ नहीं है।
Why is it that so many, all of us, so adoringly flock around this man who doesn't seem to quite know where he stands in his politics? I think it is because he reflects all the values that we hold dear from the personal, such as his integrity, such as being clear-minded, articulate in what he says, honest to himself and honest to his listeners, to being strictly secular, to being proud of being an Indian, to being a very proud Sikh.
It's really almost as a religious duty with him to be kind and affectionate and understanding.
He did a lot for Mother Teresa, and he was the first person to put her on the cover. I remember when she offered to work on the aircraft so she could get a free ride. Mr. Khushwant had spoken to Mrs. Gandhi and requested her to give Mother a pass.
He's actually a very soft person. You can hurt him very easily, and you can see that. You don't even have to know him to know that, because it's all over his writing. His writing is very often that of a wounded man, and a man who keeps silent about his wounds. He's not a man who cries. I imagine not even in private.
This magazine, they were doing this interview with me. They asked, who's the man in your life? And I said, the only man in my life is Khushwant Singh. And they put it on the billboards in Bombay. So he quite enjoyed that. He said, तूने मुझे बदनाम किया. मैंने कहा, कोई नहीं, आपने मुझे बदनाम किया है. आप भी तो लिखते रहते हैं मेरे बारे में.
The latest book is so amazing, interesting, little dirty also. When I read it, so I read few pages and I said, oh mama, what Khushwantji has written. Then all of a sudden I said, no, this Khushwantji, he does shock us, and that's what he is about. And I think most of the people really admire him for that, because everybody can't do that, and everybody can't get away with it.
It's all rubbish. I don't know how he's got that. He's certainly not a ladies' man. I'm sure if someone had to make a pass at him, he'd run a mile.
You know, he's really as straight as an arrow, and he's just so, but he loves his notoriety. I mean, he really wants to, promote the idea, and he's really worked hard at, promoting this idea that he's the Sultan of sleaze.
We are blowing his image out of the
image that he has created. I mean, his tremendous marketing with malice towards everything, including little ants. It's marketing in the real sense, because it's so goddamn untrue.
They once used to say that, dead people can't libel. So Khushwant libels dead people, says nasty things about dead people, but I'm sure he even told them when they were alive.
I think he's actually a very private person. And the things that mean the most and are the deepest, he has never written about, and I don't think he will.
He's just created this persona largely to tease, because it was so completely different from the middle class template, and therefore he created this sort of binge persona of somebody who was gossipy and vicious and loved a drink. If every Indian drank, he would have converted himself into a teetotaler.
So you say to yourself, it doesn't matter if Uncle Khushwant is right or wrong. He's a good guy.
I'd read was something I wrote a long time ago for him. It's an acrostic sonnet. You know what I mean? The first letter of each line of this 14-line form is respectively K, H, U, S, H, and so on, spelling out his name. And I couldn't resist it, because Khushwant Singh is exactly 14 letters altogether. So it seemed to lend itself to this kind of, affectionate wordplay. For Khushwant, an acrostic sonnet. King of the columnists and prince of hosts, hero of cats, 20 at least, who feed under your aegis, trencherman of toasts, Scotch, naturally, not French. God knows we need humour and courage, tolerance and wit, when hope is scarce and murder's blessed by prayer, and every bully, oaf and hypocrite nurtures his flock on hatred and hot air. Threats to your life have not made you less bold. Success can't spoil you. May you scatter your words inimitably on for decades more, no less amused and generous than your old grandmother standing by the courtyard door, halting her prayers to feed and chide the birds.